I'm Carmiece and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an asset that we need to deal with. Sunset, they just abandoned me and come back, they've been gone, they've been gone. They've been gone, they ain't seen nobody, so I guess it's over. Like this, man, you just can't leave. Not true, okay? That's what they call me. Are there people throughout history that despite whatever circumstances, they did what they wanted to do?
Welcome to the Carmiece Graves Show. Rebranded, relaunched, Coffee with Carmiece. Can I get a mic check? Can someone let me know whether you are hearing me loud and clear? Because last week we were dealing with some technical difficulties, which I hope have been sorted out. But I'll give a second for someone to post a comment to let me know that we are coming through loud and clear. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Am I in the building? Am I coming through loud and clear? Until you tell me no, I'm just going to go. So it's Coffee with Carmiece T. Graves. And the purpose of this show is to just talk about what's going on in our community with you, give you some insight, give you some tips about what I can share from my experience as a practicing attorney here in Maryland and DC, specializing in family law, estate planning, and bankruptcy that can enrich your life in one way or the other. So I've gotten mic check. Let me know if I'm coming through. So until you guys tell me otherwise, I'm going to keep going. So, this show is going to be loose. I'm going to talk about alimony, but before I get into that, I don't live in a silo. I'm a regular human being like everybody else living in the United States of this America. And we have some really pressing issues that are happening right now that are unfolding. I took about 6 months off from doing the show from fall and to the spring. So, and then I come back and it's pretty much a year later since we have been dealing with the pandemic. And I am really shocked and amazed that we're during the George Floyd trial. And now we also have another case of police brutality in the same city. So here's something that at the top of my heart, I wonder about: how do we really get out of this scenario? What do we do? How do we come together as a community and get out of this mess? What is at the root cause of some of these problems? These are the things that I contemplate, because it can't just be the superficial, we have some deep issues in this country. We have long history of racism that clearly has cemented itself and is manifested in this constant battle and struggle we have between the police, our Black men. What's at the root cause of that? Then looking at things, to me, I always look at things on a microcosm. It really reflects, I think, at the core, what's going on in our households and in our hearts, most importantly. I posted a quote today from Martin Luther King. It's on my site. I don't want to get it wrong, but he pretty much was telling us that you're not going to be able to use force to come about and create peace. And that's on both sides. But it's a big issue. And I'm saddened because I don't really know how we find our way clear without taking some sort of internal stock of what's in the tenets of our heart. But it's a vicious, nasty cycle, because the more people do, the more things happen, the more we perceive injustice, the more hate and vitriol is imbued in our hearts. And yet then we're on this roller coaster. I'm listening around the world about wars in Afghanistan. That war started, 20 years ago? I don't know. The U.S. went in there about 20 years ago saying that they want to promote democracy and peace and all of this. And it's not happened. And now they're like, okay, we're going to go. And I'm sorry, but I think they're going to fall into a deeper civil war that was worse off than when we came over here. So war really does not bring about peace. Police brutality doesn't bring about protection. It doesn't foster safety. And I think all these superficial prophylactic measures folks are making to deal with this and address this issue on a superficial level, like not really getting to the root cause, that people are harboring a lot of negativity and hate, and we're all in this together. You're not going to be able to have this level of hate and discord in your heart and coexist together in this country. It's not working. It's not working. Your businesses lose money. There's loss of life, grief, stress. You increase local taxes every time there's police brutality. There's going to be a civil suit. You're going to lose. You're going to pay a lot of money, and the taxpayers are paying for this. So I think we're really going to have to come to this reality check that harboring negativity in our hearts in any regard is going to be detrimental for us as a community. And until we address it at that level, I don't know what's at the core of the fear of the Black man. I don't know what's that about. I'm not a police officer, a white male, a white person. I don't know what it is, but I know that it's going to be an inside job. Also, interestingly enough, we're still dealing with the vaccination rollout. And recently they have suspended the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccination. So if you recently got it, just check, make sure you stay on top of your symptoms, make sure you're in good health. Although it's a really slight, chance that you could be impacted negatively, nonetheless, it's not zero. And I'm going to talk about that just for a second. Today, we're going to go over alimony, and I'm going to talk to you about how to protect your assets, give you some tips, greater understanding about what that claim is about. And so you can, if you are in a situation where divorce may be in your future and your crystal ball of future and the grumblings are there and everybody getting tired and ready to move on, and I'm going to give you the schematic, the blueprint, the outline of what it looks like in terms of whether there's a real potential for alimony, because there's a lot of myths, okay? There's a lot of myths out there about who has to pay and who doesn't and who's entitled to what. So I'm going to unpack all of that for you today, okay? So, but before we get there, we are in the midst of COVID, and I listened to something interesting on YouTube, and again, they're saying that, a lot of the issues and health concerns that we have really stem emotionally to our well-being. Our emotional well-being, how we respond maybe to the vaccinations, maybe to COVID in general. But it makes sense that we are holistic beings and our emotional well-being matters. And for us, so I'm always really cognizant of agitating factors. That's a real way to keep people down, is to keep them depressed, to keep them agitated, to keep them disenfranchised, under control. Because if you're not feeling good, it's going to show up in a myriad of fashions. We talked about the youth these days feeling really isolated, although there's social media, feeling really disconnected. They say our millennials feel the most isolated, although we're supposed to be the most interconnected ever. But we're lacking, people are very interconnected to their devices, but that's not a connection. Human connection is critical. So with those things, it's with a heavy heart that we have another Black man who's lost life at the hands of police brutality. And we're going to have to unpack this together. And I think until there's a recognition that ignoring what happened in the past, not acknowledging it, not really healing from it, not really getting past it. Like, it's always been this idea that diversity and inclusion is good for business, right? And I used to have a hard time kind of understanding it. It seemed like diversity and inclusion is really good generally, but really we're in this together and we want to thrive. People generally want to live a good life, but harboring negativity and hate really always backfires. It sets us several paces back. So I can just put it out there in that regard. So when I'm looking at issues on the larger scale, I just have to think about, how am I dealing with my fellow humans on a day-to-day basis, okay? Because this is individual to individual. This is circumstance to circumstance. And this has been a rough week for me. This is a week that I probably have not done the best, okay? I got a little snippy with a couple customer service reps. You know what I mean? I just have been under pressure. So with those things, I take personal responsibility for my well-being to really promote my own health and safety by making sure that I'm feeling as well as I can. And when I'm not engaging with people as much as possible. Those simple things can really go a long way. Now, with that being said, another thing that has been on the top of my mind, bear with me guys, is it seems like there's so many different experiences that people are having that they report the news like it's a collective monolithic experience that Americans are having in this current day and age. And it's really not. It's amazing to see that people that are able to have some comfort and peace and focus and well-being are thriving. I mean, people are making more money than they've ever made. How is the housing market off the chain? Who is out buying all these houses? Some people are making a lot of money while others are really struggling to, keep a roof over their head, and now are for the first times going to food banks. And to me, that is just really interesting to sit back and look at these polarizing experiences. And one of the things I do see in common is this idea that mindset. It's really the luxury, because, if you think back to, I just think about the days of Socrates when, you had the luxuries to kind of sit back and pontificate some higher questions and issues in life, or even in our African countries, kings and queens that, had the great Malian empires. And just when you have wealth, when you have resources, when you're at ease, you're able to kind of dream, you're able to bring better resources and experiences. And people not knowing that your mindset is the primary thing that creates your fortune is really a disservice. The idea, if I say that and you're like, no, that's not true, that's simplistic, I'm telling you, you're the one in the not knowing. Because there's a lot of people that know this. And if you read any book on creating wealth, they're going to get right to mindset. So I'm just saying, still isolate yourself as much as possible. Let's take whatever action we need to take for the greater good, but let's protect our mind space, because that's where your fortune, your love, all of the good things that you want, that's where it comes from. That's why vision boards work. If it's not true and what I'm saying is crazy, why do people create vision boards? And people that spend time with their vision boards will, get up the board and be like, everything that I ever wanted happened on this board. Y'all, I just went online at Amazon. I said, let me get me a pretty board, put some things, because it's been my experience. Things that I've lightly contemplated have come to me. And we've got to be able to create fortune without society fixing itself, because I'm not really sure I see that happening in the near future. So therefore, I am a person that I'd like to kind of take control of my own destiny and not really wait for America to come to grips with its own soul and start that healing process. We have to do that, but I think that's a longer road ahead. And to defer good fortune for you today based on what others are doing leaves you powerless. And I would not be waiting on someone to come to Jesus on some of the atrocities that have happened here and the benefits that they've had as a result. So there's things that we can do on both levels, but it's good news. It's good news that the things that you can do for yourself personally are the most impactful for your environment. So I am just working to enhance and add value where I can and contribute at, my little small contribution to the greater good. And sometimes that means making sure that I'm feeling and engaging at higher levels. And when I'm not, I have a process to get me back. So y'all are going to hear me say that over and over, because I know a lot of people want to be peaceful and happy. So let's talk about a topic that brings a lot of unrest. So here's a scenario. So I do a lot of family law in Maryland and DC, and it's a primary practice of my law firm. And it's a passion that I've had. I've gone through a divorce myself. I understand the stress of it, and I understand the factors that must be resolved to move forward. So it's an unfortunate circumstance that you did embark upon this journey to have a lifelong partner, and now things have gone awry. Sometimes relationships, all the time, relationships are opportunities to learn more about ourselves, to learn more about what we need or desire or want to contribute to a relationship. So sometimes they will transition and change as you learn and grow. And it's not always a bad actor, but it could be a growing of the parties. And we have to now resolve a particular issue with alimony. So let's just jump right into this topic because it leaves some people up at night thinking, I want to leave this relationship and the financial responsibilities behind. And this concept of alimony has it be such that you could be continuing to pay for a spouse that you want to move on from. Ooh. Okay, so generally, I would tell you this. There's a couple of different types of alimony. So let's go through that because there's these myths out there that I'm going to have to pay my spouse for the rest of her life or rest of his life until they die or get remarried or something like that. So that type of alimony is called indefinite alimony, and it's a heavy hitter. It is indefinite, meaning that until this person passes away, until this person dies, you're going to pay some sort of alimony. That is typically not the usual case. Okay, so let's start there. It's not typically the usual case that a court would award that. Second is rehabilitative alimony, meaning that, the person needs to rehabilitate their ability to financially take care of themselves independent of this marriage. That is more likely the case if alimony is awarded at all. Also, there could be alimony awarded during the case. So usually there's temporary assistance, financial support that can be awarded as we are going through the case. So as soon as someone files, they can say, okay, let's get a temporary hearing going. We usually call that a pendente lite hearing because that's Latin for pending litigation. So let's get this pendente, and I don't know, Latin is used, during in the legal system today. So pendente lite hearing, and let's get some child support, let's get some alimony, let's get some things like that going, okay? So now that you know the three types, the one that's pending the litigation, one that's rehabilitative, and the third one, the heavy hitter, it's indefinite. So let's get to the myths. Now, first thing I got to tell you is that people say, well, I'm entitled to live the same sort of lifestyle that I enjoyed when I was a married couple, okay? That is a big myth. And how the court really determines this, and it's really a gray area because there's about 11 factors that the court has to go through to try and come up with what is a fair and reasonable award, if any at all, okay? So one of the first things I tell my clients is that you're going to have the ability to pay. That's a big one. That's a big factor. It's the biggest factor. So if you put together a financial statement and now you guys are not, because usually there's the economies of scale, right? That you guys have lived together in one household. So say, you made 90,000 each, you know what I mean? Each person made 90,000 after taxes. That comes out to be about $10,000 coming into that household. And now you had one mortgage and maybe two cars and car insurance and one set of utilities. And you were able to really benefit from the fact that you were sharing these expenses and there was residual money available for you to enjoy a certain lifestyle. But now that you got to split $5,000, husband walks away with his $5,000 and you keep yours. But now each of you have mortgages or rents to pay. Now the expenses are doubled. Now there's two sets of utility bills, and the like. So you understand that when you separate and now are living in two separate households, the expenses, a lot of them have doubled, okay? And also the income has been divided between two people. So we have to really do a real financial statement analysis to see, based on how things are now, at the end of the day, is there any money to be shared? That is like the number one question. So a good financial statement is critical, because one of the things the court is not going to do, generally, let me not jump out there and tell you what a judge is not going to do. A judge has the ability within the confines of the law to decide as they will, but typically one of the big factors is, a policy is that they're not going to make one destitute to pay alimony. Okay, so this is the concept. So let's talk about what the concept is, and then we'll go into some of the things that you need to be thinking about. And I'll give you an outline of a typical case in rehabilitative alimony and indefinite, right? So here, when you got married, unless you had a prenuptial agreement, so now remember, we're on the default rules of the state. Okay, if you have a prenuptial agreement, that's my biggest asset protection tip of the day. Prenuptial agreement, antenuptial agreement will decide this issue in writing before we even proceed. How we'll deal with alimony during a separation, how we'll deal with alimony during the pending of a litigation, how we'll deal with alimony in any regard, okay, is decided in a prenuptial agreement or after you get married in an antenuptial agreement, okay? But say you don't have that, and because you didn't get married to get divorced, and you didn't want to put that kind of stigma, and it's a personal decision, so I'm not being facetious about it. It's something that you have to decide for yourself. But say, okay, we're here and we don't have a prenup, okay? So we're going to be moving under the default rules of the state as to how to decide whether a party is entitled to alimony, okay? Now, there are 11 factors, and it's going to be looking at one we already talked about, your ability, worried about alimony and has a potential claim from your spouse. You're going to be, but wait, before I go there, I wanted to give you this economic concept so you can understand what we're dealing with. When you get married, without the prenup, you are considered one economic unit, okay? And that's why a lot of these rights flow back and forth. You kind of, take on that responsibility to take care of your spouse, okay? So the court is going to be looking at a couple of things. How long have you been married? Because now you're saying, look, I don't want this relationship anymore, and I don't want this financial responsibility of this person anymore. And before they rip the Band-Aid off, the court wants to make sure that this person, your spouse, that you did make this commitment to, isn't going to fall and be destitute and a responsibility of the state, or, just fall on hard times because you want to cut and run after you made this commitment. So it is a big deal, okay? Now, so first they're going to be looking at, well, do you have any extra money? Okay, that's a big factor. If you don't have any extra money, the conversation is going to be really short. Actually, I got a case going on now, and that it's an alimony case. I actually have a few, and that is the biggest factor that we have to determine whether there's anything left at the end of the day to share with spouse. Then we got to assess the need. Now, this is where it really gets interesting, because most of the factors speak to whether your spouse has the ability to get employment, if they had not been employed, if there's a need. Are you just saying that I should get some of that money because? So you're going to have to demonstrate, this other person, the spouse has to demonstrate that there's a financial need. Because in my example, when I started off today, both parties made the same amount of money. Well, I mean, I got my $5,000 to live my life, and so do you. So I think we're good. There may be some other factors involved, but just on that plain simple analysis, so the person has to demonstrate that there's an actual need for financial assistance from the spouse, right? So you have to demonstrate that there's a need. Then you got to figure out, okay, for how much and for how long, if at all. And that's when it has to get into whether it's going to be rehabilitative or it's going to be indefinite. And that's when we have to look into the other factors about the age of the parties, the educational level of the parties, whether the person, whether the parties have sufficient work experience, had they been working throughout the course of the marriage, and how did you set up your life as a married couple, and is it such that this person can seamlessly transition into taking care of themselves. So that's what the court's trying to figure out. That's what we need to understand. Can you pay? Do they have a need? If there's a need, for how long? How long goes to how long do they need to get back on their feet? Is it, a couple months, take a couple classes, give you some time to get your dust off your resume if you hadn't been working? Okay, so here is the outline of an indefinite alimony case that I actually achieved on behalf of a wife. And another one that I threatened enough to get a nice settlement. Pretty much it's a long-term marriage. Usually when I start to hear that people have been married 25, 20, 30 years, long marriage, and not just long marriage, but also that marriage started, say, now, and the person is like reaching retirement age. So if you got married around 30 or 20, say you got married around 20, and this is a 30-year marriage, and now wife is, or person seeking alimony, husband, is late in years, and I would say, late 50s, approaching 60s and above, and they're pretty much retirement age, that is going to be an issue, okay? We have to look at the physical and emotional health of each of the parties. Is there a reason why this person cannot return to work at this point? I mean, one of my clients had a debilitating back issue. I think there was some sort of, injury that made it that this back injury was never going to resolve itself. So she could never really go back to work. Big factor. The age again. So if the parties got married when they were 20 and this is a 20-year marriage and they're 40, you're like, you got some time, what's your skill set? Now we look to, do you have work experience? And can you really re-enter the market? Maybe you need 36 months, okay? So these are the things that we have to consider this all on the other side of the person paying. Are they on a fixed income? Is there something that may prohibit the payor from, being able to count on future income? Big factor. Here's another big factor, that alimony is calculated after we determine what other property have been distributed from the marriage. So it's the last thing that's considered, because the court needs to know that if you just got $1 million in property, or you liquidated the business and the cars and all this other stuff and got a buyout from the marital home and you sitting on 500 grand, they might say, I think you're good. I don't think you have a need. It can go to the factor of whether the person has a financial need, what property they have after the court determines a marital property award must be considered. Because that would be unfair to kind of say, well, I don't have anything, and then turn around and do the marital property award, assess alimony, and then say, okay, you get 50% of the value of the business, which we have have determined to be, $1 million business. So you're walking away with 500 grand. So the court is equitable. This is an equitable, claim, and we're looking at what's fair and what's just. So the court will go through the marital property award first and then determine after. Now, so in the case where we had the indefinite alimony, there wasn't no property. There's no property. So they're like, skip past that. Let's go ahead and get to the alimony. And that's something that you can argue. Like, we didn't have a house. We didn't have this. But there's no retirement. There's no 401ks. Usually a big asset that is distributed for regular common people are 401ks. So right here, I'll just pause for dramatic effect and tell you that I think that if you are in your 40s, getting married, and people are coming to the table with assets, a modern use of a prenuptial and antenuptial agreement could just exclude equity in the house and the 401k. So at least you can walk away with what you came in with, and you guys can start to build together as a economic union intentionally. Okay, because even if you had this asset before you got married, once you get married, you start sharing the equity with your spouse. I don't care if they didn't come to the job not day one. I don't care if they didn't save a dollar. And usually that ends up to be a real bitter reality. Okay. We're going to get into that one because I got a little soapbox that I need to jump on about these modern uses of prenuptial agreements because of some of the situations, a lot of the situations I find my clients in with regards to their retirements and assets that they started to acquire before they got married. So there's some myths there that we probably can have time to knock that one out too. So, alimony. So, if you guys were regular people, you know what I mean, and everybody worked, you worked, I had my federal government job, and so did you. We got up every day and did what we had to do. And there's not a big disparity in the incomes. That's a big factor too. If you make, $500,000 a year and this person's making 100 grand, still there has to be a need because 100 grand might get it done, but if there's a need, and it's not just because the person made more money. Okay. That's one of the myths. Oh, well, they make a lot of money, so I should get it, Now that conversation about just because it's accumulated during the course of the marriage, I should get it, that goes to marital property. That's the entitlement there, that just because we was married and the property appreciated and I didn't pick up a hammer, I'm still the wife, I'm still the spouse, I still should be involved. So alimony, don't be afraid of that. If you think that's a claim that you are worried about, if you smell divorce in the air because there's a time for a change, don't be ashamed about that. It's better to have the hard conversation. It's better to pick up the phone, get your consultation, because you'll feel a lot of relief. Actually, I was doing some stuff for my business and I got on the line and I got my bookkeeper to inform me about things I just didn't know about payroll. I'm a CPA. I wasn't ever a bookkeeper, so I didn't get into the day-to-day operations of payroll and things like that. And it was stressful and overwhelming for me to even fathom this stuff because I know what happens when you get it wrong. So just to get a consultation with her and get her guidance and for her to relieve the stress and get past the things that I thought, because when I ran the payroll, I said 50%. I didn't set it up right. So when I tried to run my payroll, it was taking like half my check in taxes. I was like, oh, no. So just getting real consultation from an expert that understands it can grant you a lot of relief, clear up a lot of misnomers, and do an analysis that's particular to your case, okay? So that's what I want you to know. Don't worry about understanding everything because I did drop a lot of technical stuff there. If you can follow it, great. If you have more questions, I can put up my banner. Wait, let me try. Hold on. Okay, y'all, I am trying with this StreamYard to get this stuff right. But look, scrolling at the bottom, you guys know how to reach me with further questions. So hopefully this has been informative and that you are more informed about alimony. And no, don't be just let's take it one step at a time, okay? And this is where the concept comes, where it's cheaper to keep them. And I'm going to say them. So let's just transition, okay? Close this up. Let me get on the soapbox about something that I see. I just want you to understand, I'm going to talk to my ladies right now, okay? We got to have a conversation about something. And it deals with coming into the relationship with property, you having more financial assets. And I remember, you guys know that guy, Stephen Speaks. I'm not going to talk about the other guy. I'm going to save that. I'm not even ready to deal with the Jackson drama. I was heartbroken and devastated by that case. I'm going to do a whole show on dealing with narcissistic, toxic relationships because they're rampant. Okay. That's not an anomaly. The things that you think you're seeing and perceiving about that relationship are what you're seeing and perceiving. And it's really toxic. It's really dangerous. And we can do a whole show on that alone. But I'm going to step it back right now and stay on this topic of coming into the relationship and woman has more assets than husband. Couple things that I've been seeing happen. And I think only reason why I mentioned Jackson, because I was thinking about Stephen. Stephen, hold us down. Don't disappoint us, brother. Okay, we're keeping the faith in you, because I really liked Black men stepping up and speaking about relationships. I really like that concept, and we're not going to collapse the space for one clown. So Stephen had a blurb from his book that he's been sharing to promote the book, and it talked about sponsoring your spouse versus supporting. I think I might just get the book because he done said a word, okay? And I'm here to tell you that is a really big topic, because what's happening is there's a good faith effort on behalf of my sisters to not judge a brother by what he has, because you're there for love. It's not about money. You're not looking, you're not digging for gold. You're just looking for love. Okay. And you kind of step aside and turn a blind eye to what kind of assets and the portfolio this brother has. Okay. Listen, do whatever you feel is right. But I'm going to tell you on the other end, if this thing don't work out, what you did during the marriage is what you're going to do during the divorce. Okay. So if you was writing all the checks, if you was taking care of all the financial responsibilities, guess what? If you're the only one that's financially responsible, and this goes both ways, both sides, if you're the only one that could save a coin, then guess what? When we get down to the divorce and you're the only one holding the bag of money, and it's our money, okay? So remember, you're one economic union. So if you're the only one putting away for our savings and our future, just know that mentally. I just need you to know that mentally, that you're one economic union. So if you come to the marriage with, 20,000 in assets and he comes with zero, well, guess what? If y'all, say that's all that you acquire and it stays that, at the end of this divorce, you walking away with 10 and he's walking away with 10. And that is a painful reality that I'm saying. And to me, personally, I'll just be candid with you. Someone having material possessions to me is important because it shows your character. To me, your ability to make good decisions, be consistent, at least have what I have, you know what I mean? Be as consistent, be as wealth producing as I am, because I think at least we're still, we're putting forth the same effort. Maybe we invested the same amount in our education and we dedicated in that regard. Then we went out and we fought in the workplace. You know what I mean? And was able to get a little job, you know what I mean? And put something aside and do what you have to do to get your credit together to go get a house. You know how hard it is, to go through got to go through the programs, got to clean up the credit, got to make better decisions. There's a lot that goes into, those material possessions. Now, if you went out there and hustled on the street corner, your stuff ain't worth that much. Okay. but I can't say that. Maybe the nights you spent up at night is a lot. So I'm not even going to judge that. Okay. But what I'm saying is the type of, energy that it takes to produce these things speaks to the person's character more than anything else. The fact that you can't keep a job, the fact that you don't have a job could be speaking to some deeper issues that I would like to see that sorted out before we go ahead and become one economic union where I'm carrying the bag. Because guess what? At the end of it, if you're the only one that put coin aside, it's only that coin that we have to divide. And without an antenuptial agreement or a prenuptial agreement, you're going to be really pissed off, that you have to give up some of how you feel to be your stuff. Okay. So I'm just putting that out there for the greater good. Do what you got to do, but look at character. You know what I mean? Because you want your spouse to have good integrity and character, and what they're able to produce and how they spend their time could be reflected in what they are manifesting in their lives. That's how I see it. So it's not about the end product, like, oh, I want to enjoy your stuff. No, I just want to see that you manifesting, that you eking out something good that's for our benefit. And I need to be doing the same. It's both ways. It's not one-sided in my view. You want your partner to come to this table and y'all are able to lock arms and run and make this happen. If it's the scenario where you're like, look, I got sugar daddy, sugar daddy know his role, you know what I mean? And everybody's on board with that. Just be clear. But what I'm finding for our women, some of my sisters, we're getting to this divorce, and now I got to tell you some bad news about, we have to talk about your 401k. And it is a bitter pill to swallow that not only did you just not turn out to be ish, I got to split bag with you too. Ooh. So I don't want that to be the case. So I'm putting this message out for the greater good. You can easily, and if you're not sure, but you want to go ahead and do that thing for love, well, let's keep the bag out of it and do a prenuptial agreement. And anybody that's not really into your stuff and just into you, I don't think they should have a problem signing it. I mean, if you feel you're equally yoked, you probably don't need it. You're like, look, whatever, I'm good. I'm confident that I'll be able to make money, and I'm confident that I have a person too, that if it doesn't work, you're not going to come for me like that. So think about these things. Think about the character of the person. Like, look at how they really show up. Give it time. See how they show up in life. Okay. Now, final tip here. I might have said this before, but I can't say it enough because it keeps happening. So I'm going to give you the evil eye. Remember, Sarah up in the sun? Remember, as and stuff? She'll give you the eye. Let me get an eye on this one because it's a problem. My women have been being advised to take legal action from marital counselors, more specifically from the church. They go for marital counseling, spiritual counseling at church. And some people have been telling my clients that to make this man feel better, he should be added to the deed to your house because you have more than he has. That can be made into a meme of a slow blink. Okay? You can meme it. So here's what I have to say about that. Please don't do that. Please don't take legal action against your property without getting a legal consultation from a lawyer. I definitely defer to whomever spiritual advisor you have giving you spiritual advice, but please defer to legal counsel before you take legal action and start changing deeds and doing legal things, okay? So that you are clear about what you're doing, okay? So that's what I would say to that. That has really caused some bitter scenarios that have people further locked into a scenario and have them, not be able to move on. And it's a red flag. Let me just be clear. Let me just say it again. It's a red flag that to make your man feel better, you need to kill him and add him to your deed, it's a red flag that he don't have nothing of his own. Okay. And then on top of that, to make him feel better, that goes to that sponsorship versus support. Sponsorship versus support. I think I'm gonna go ahead and see what Stefan has to say. I'm gonna get his book. Maybe we'll do a review on it. Tell me what you think. But I just gotta say that. Maybe it's not politically correct. Maybe it's not popular. But I'm gonna tell you right now, it's a red flag. Your spouse don't, like, do you, babe? You got your thing. No, don't worry. I have my thing. I'm going to get my thing. Or don't worry. You keep that. We're going to build something together. Matter of fact, you have that property. Build that for your retirement. Leave that to maybe your kids or whatever, or you go and get a tenant in there and build that equity, for a rainy day later on, and what we'll do is we'll get a house together. Okay, I will come, with my oh, hold on, let me say something. I will come with my wherewithal, my strong determination to provide for us, and we will develop something beautiful together. But to kind of say, give me half of what you got because I don't have anything. All right, y'all. So I'm gonna leave it there. So thanks so much for tuning in to Coffee with Carmiece. And I will be back Wednesday at 11. And, it's not going to just be strictly, I'm just going to vibe. You know what I mean? I do have coffee here. You be like, Carmiece, here's your coffee. I really do. You see my coffee mug? It's with my lipstick on my teeth that I can't get off, but whatever. So anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. And I will see you guys next week. God willing, please stay safe. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Carmiece Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like, say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together.